Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pacific Time Zone. My name is Elspeth. I am going to be the moderator for this session. I will be helping primarily with tech support and moderating the chat. Please note the session is being recorded. I do not work for Zoom, but if you're having problems, please mention it in the chat and we'll see if we can help. The session is going to be about 20 minutes of presentation and about 20 minutes Q&A. But whatever happens, we're going to be ending in 40 minutes sharp, or Ben will have my head, and I like keeping my head. If you have a question for the Q&A, please put it in the chat. That's the easiest way. And I will select as many questions as we have time for, roughly in the order asked. Please keep the questions appropriate. I have been advised that there is a content warning for this particular discussion of urban legends, so please be aware of that. But any abusive behavior will result in removal from this session, and a repeat performance will result in getting booted from the event without a refund. With that, let me introduce our speakers. Nick is a recent graduate from the University of Victoria with a degree in musicology. Their studies mostly comprise an analysis surrounding horror film soundtracks, and they're excited to share their knowledge with a broader audience. They said their favorite kind of dumpling is ravioli. While Bailey is currently in university for medieval Roman studies. After learning Roman and Greek history for the last 8 years, Bailey has decided to try his hand at explaining things and sharing history rather than just learning. He expressed a preference for steamed dumplings. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters who need to move on stage. Hang on a second, I'll be right back.
We made it. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for that.
All on you guys now.
Sweet.
Thank you, Elspeth.
Hello. I am Bailey, and this is Nick, and we are from Totalus Jeffianus, a podcast where we rank all of the Jeffs from Totalus Rankium.
But today, we're not ranking anything.
No.
We're going to be discussing the topic of urban legends and how stories can affect real history and vice versa. So this is including, but not limited to, Jeff the Killer, topical. And content warning for the folks here, we are going to be discussing some gore, murder, blood, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
It gets a little graphic.
Which we know how history fans love that, but, you know.
So just be aware.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Okay.
So first, we're going to be covering Bloody Mary. There's beauty in chaos, and I am its queen.
Yes, you are.
The truth is, I was wronged.
Truly.
Slay. Bloody Mary. Mary of England was born on February 18th, 1516 in Greenwich, England. She was the only surviving child of Henry VIII, everyone's favorite English monarch.
I only know the musical.
And his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, in Spain, I think. Mary's childhood wouldn't have been a pleasant one, as her mother had miscarried 3 times, while her father, irritated that his wife clearly wasn't having more children, divorced her.
Well, was that legal?
Yeah. What is the song of? Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived?
Oh, the musical.
Yeah, I know that one too. Over the following few years, Mary would see her father remarry, and her younger sister, Elizabeth, was born.
Not to be confused with Elspeth.
Yeah, or Queen Elizabeth, which all 3 have been known to be getting confused, but yeah. Mary was becoming obsolete in the palace, with Elizabeth being born and in favor. So much so that people around her started calling her Lady Mary instead of Princess Mary.
That's
a demotion.
That's rude.
They're going from living together to co-hosts, but like the other way, the other direction. Which obviously is a big snub. Mary fell into a depression at this time and would often get sick. It didn't help that death would surround Mary, as her mother died, and her new stepmother that she loved, was executed.
Oh,
yeah. I don't think she loved her though. Don't worry.
Divorced, executed.
What is? Yeah, it is what it is. And she would also watch growing up as her father would use and abuse his wives, while also trying and failing to get Mary married off to different important people around Europe. But this would all allow her to build a strong and determined character as she went into her adulthood. And eventually, we love a character development moment. Eventually, the line of succession would lead its way to Mary, and Mary would become the first English woman to become the first English woman of all time. She's the first woman to take the English throne. And the road to Bloody Mary was set. Despite the countless important things she did in her reign, we're going to ignore all of that, like most of history does, and just talk about the one thing she did that was really not great. When she's most remembered for killing 280 Protestants that she burned on a stake in public as heretics. This, more than anything, would cement her legacy as Bloody Mary.
Yeah, so I looked into the ritual, and what I remember it being is the classic, you're in a bathroom, turn off all the lights. Yeah. You chant her name 3 times.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
Oh! And now she's here as an interviewer. But the original divination of Bloody Mary was told that young women would walk up a flight of stairs with a candle in hand and a hand mirror.
Dangerous.
If they gazed into the mirror, they would catch a glimpse of who would to be their future husband.
Awesome.
However, you could have also caught a glimpse of either a skull or the Grim Reaper. Oh. This was an indication that they were to die before they had the chance to be married.
I wouldn't leave the house. That's it. Bubble wrap. I'm it.
But as stated, there is some debate on the identification and origins of Bloody Mary. So another possible source, and I didn't know this, is Elizabeth Bathory, who is a 17th century Hungarian countess who tortured and killed around 660 young girls and women.
That is not a slay moment.
Bathed in their blood and was accused of vampirism.
Yeah.
That feels like a more
girl dinner, really.
Not girl dinner. Another possibility is Mary Worth, who is either a slave who was killed while escaping the American South via the Underground Railroad.
That's a slay moment.
Well, she was killed.
Oh.
Or a woman who was burned at the stake at the witch trials during early modern. So you can see how this story may have adapted to more modern.
Yeah, if their name was Mary and they were a woman in history, likely they're being called Bloody Mary. Yeah.
But as we stated, the ritual, as it's known,
a slayed moment is crazy.
The ritual, as we know it today, is considered an act of catoptromancy. Or mirror divination, which I can say much easier.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
An individual or a group must chant her name into a mirror in a dimly lit, candle-lit, or completely dark room. The number of times varies, but I've always heard it as 3. But up to 47 I've seen is the... So you're just in there.
Yeah, again, like at what point are you sitting there and you're like, am I at 47 yet? Like,
I think at some point you just hallucinate because you've been saying this for so long.
And you're standing in the dark. Yeah.
But then Bloody Mary is said to either appear in the mirror behind you or come out of the mirror, and she's either stated, it varies a whole lot because there's no one concrete source on this. Right. She's either a very kind, benevolent spirit or someone who will slash your face and kill you, and she's jealous.
So I've heard. Yeah. Now, these stories with like Bloody Mary were huge in traditional storytelling. They were always told in groups with people around in a room and everyone going in the bathroom together and seeing if this will work. But eventually, storytelling took a different turn as the dawn of the internet age, as we will call it now.
Beginning of the end.
Has started to really capture the horror scene. And eventually, a creepypasta called Jeff the Killer would be released.
Well,
I'm not insane. I'm just different.
Just quirky.
Just quirky. There's beauty in the chaos I bring.
Right.
Jeff the Killer is a character created by Saussure. Saussure?
Saussure.
The first time Jeff appeared on the internet was August 4th. 2005, when the now famous image of Jeff the Killer was uploaded to a Japanese forum.
I think a fun fact about this too that I didn't know: the original Jeff image is actually considered lost media because we have no clue where that original image came from.
Susser, who did upload the image, said that it was him wearing a bag over his face, but even that's been debunked as not true.
So we have no idea where it came from.
Yeah. But the image shows a horrifically disfigured teenager and has grown to be one of the most iconic, infamous, and in some circles still disturbing images on the internet.
I think I've seen it so many times.
I know, it's kind of like Momo. When I first saw Momo, I was like,
oh yeah, my heart in my boots. But
yeah. Now, this image began to spread far and wide because of its jump scare kind of quality it can use. And it was colloquially called internet screamers. Jeff, we're not ranking Jeff the Killer, thank God. But eventually it would make its way to 4chan and Newgrounds. Of course it would. But in 2011, it would make its way onto Tumblr and creepypasta.com. Now, the story of Jeff begins as a boy named Jeffrey Woods, about 13 years of age, moved to a new neighborhood with his older brother and parents. Yes. Fresh start. You know, new neighborhood, new me. Right? This is going to be the best high school experience. The story rapidly begins to descend
into depravity.
So
on the first day of school, Jeff is held at knife point by 3 bullies, which is not a great way.
It kind of reminds me of my school days.
Well, but Jeff is a strong, independent 13-year-old boy. Yeah. So he easily
independent white boys.
He easily disarms his bullies, and he beats them up pretty bad.
Yeah. Taekwondo really kicked in at that point.
His older brother claimed that he was the one who did the beatings and took the fall for Jeff, and so he was then arrested. This sent Jeff into a spiral of guilt and depression, who he was then made fun of for being the quiet kid.
Yeah.
But one day he woke up, he's like, you know what, I can't keep living on like this. My brother took that for me. I gotta live a better life. So I'm gonna go to a house party and I'm gonna talk to people my age and it'll be great. However, he shows up at this party and those 3 bullies are there. So obviously a fight ensues.
Of course.
And this one ends a little bit more brutally than the other ones.
Yeah. Both sides are pretty badly affected by this battle.
Yeah.
With Jeff getting bleach poured on his face, and then his face lit on fire just in case the bleach didn't do the damage.
This is that content warning.
Yeah. But in the scuffle, Jeff was able to kill one of the bullies and was brought to the hospital.
Should have seen the other guy.
Exactly. Now.
Yeah. So after returning home from the hospital, it was clear that Jeff's mental state was broken at this point. Whether or not this is how mental states work, up for debate. But Jeff's mother found him in the bathroom, carving a smile into his face so that he would no longer have to exert the energy needed to smile.
Okay, Joker.
Literally, okay, Joker.
Okay. But that does bring up a good point, because Jeff the Killer is actually, in some circles, seen as kind of like a Joker figure. So much so that one of the titles he's used is not a Joker, and also rip off. Well, in terms of the Joker.
Speaking of rip off, that is exactly what he did to his eyelids while he burned them off. So he could always witness and see his own face.
How do you burn off your eyelids without the rest of your face being affected? I guess it already is.
That's all that survived. But after this, he then kills his parents and his brother. Unbeknownst to anyone, he just does this.
Thanks.
And then he attempts to kill his brother, and in some sources he succeeds, but in not all. And then he turned his sights on the 2 remaining bullies, and once he succeeded in killing them, Jeff skyrocketed into internet infamy as one of the worst creepypastas ever.
And obviously, with his newfound fame as a serial killer, Jeff had to do what your favorite thing is: give himself a nickname.
You can't give yourself a nickname. It doesn't count.
He gave it, and his name is Jeff the Killer.
He couldn't even be a little bit creative. I kill people. That means Jeff the Killer.
Now, eventually, Jeff the Killer would inspire the future of a lot of different creepypastas. And one of them, specifically going towards our next topic, Slender Man.
So Slender Man actually...
Fear is my ally, and I am its master.
How could I interrupt that?
It's already too late.
So Slender Man as a character actually predates Jeff the Killer. However, he wasn't created as a story or a creepypasta. He was created by a person named Eric Knudsen for the Something Awful forums as part of a paranormal Photoshop contest. So it was just a handful of images that had no real backstory, but they were creepy. But he is described and depicted as a very tall, extremely thin figure with unnaturally long arms and a featureless white face.
Art project gone wrong. Police called.
Well, the mythos of Slender Man does not originate from a single piece of literature, but rather in many online pieces of fiction from writing, art, and video. So it was sort of like a collaborative project. But the piece of media that truly skyrocketed Slender Man into the forefront of pop culture was a video series on YouTube known as Marble Hornets, which ran from 2009 to 2014. And it is a phenomenal piece.
Oh, is it?
You gotta watch.
It's
very good. But it was created by Troy Wagner and Joseph Delage.
Also, definitely related to Richard Wagner,
the composer.
That is a fact.
Obviously. So this entire series was based off of the mythos of Slender Man, where he plays a character known as the Operator. And this series is what introduced the idea that Slender Man operates and seeks out proxies, which are humans that fall under his influence and do his bidding.
Yeah, which is interesting because in some places you will find that Jeff the Killer is actually one of Slenderman's proxies. But there is kind of like a rebellious side of the internet that thinks that's totally untrue.
Things are heating up in the creepypasta.
Jeff the Killer fights Slenderman, and that his insanity doesn't allow for him to be manipulated by Slenderman. It's neither here nor there.
The kids these days.
So cool and quirky.
So this is where we sort of get into the real life impact of this tale. So as Bloody Mary had fictional and real life consequences, this story does too. And we're not going to be naming any of the individuals involved in this case. If you wish to learn more, the details are readily available over the internet, but we don't feel the need, sort of been buried the hatchet, so to speak.
Yeah. Buried the knife, really.
Well, on May 31st, 2014, two 12-year-old girls lured their friend into a wooded area of a local park in Wisconsin and stabbed her 19 times.
Yeah, not great.
She did live, the victim, which is great. But during this, the two perpetrators of this crime had prepared provisions such as granola bars, water bottles, and photos of their families, who they explained to detectives as, well, we're never going to see them again, so we got to have these photos on us.
Right.
They had gone missing for 5 hours after the crime.
Planning their great escape. They
had wandered into the wooded area of the Nicollet National Forest in Wisconsin, and their motive was to find the mansion that Slender Man lived in, as the friend they had stabbed was their sacrifice, and they were going to become his proxies.
Exactly. And that mansion is, in fact, the Woodland Mansion from Minecraft, guaranteed.
Obviously.
So, and everyone knows how hard it is to find the Woodland Mansion. It spawns like once every 1,600 blocks. Blah.
Yeah, and not to perpetrate the whole satanic panic idea, I'm sure these individuals were having many mental health crises, and it was not. If it was Slender Man, it was going to be something else. But it was a bit. This is
Jeff
what
the Killer.
This is what really creepypasta hit a new national sort of popularity after this case had hit the news. Obviously, it was something that we had never really seen before. The impact of internet folklore and it's these real world consequences,
and it skyrocketed this story into being the biggest internet legend so far. And one other thing that I wanted to cover was the relationship between Jeff the Killer and Slender Man. Now, a lot can be said about the game and Jeff the Killer's story. But there are a few things that are very interesting about the two's relationship. There's lots of fan art made. Most of it is Slender Man being seen as with all his tentacles kind of fighting, and then Jeff the Killer with his like blades. He's always holding them underneath like he's some sort of Marvel superhero.
Because he was.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you also see that sometimes on Slenderman's pages there will be figures written or drawn on the papers, and a lot of theories are that is Jeff the Killer. And there's also a theory that when you're in the forest playing the Slenderman game, that you are actually playing as Jeff the Killer, trying to get away from Slenderman.
There you go.
But yeah,
it's all hearsay.
It's all hearsay.
But yeah, so that's how our stories and our history can affect pop culture, and vice versa, how pop culture can affect our history.
And how a story skewed in a certain way can lead to the murder or attempted murder of teenager by teenager friends.
Yeah. There we go. Woo! Thank you all. It
was quite a ride.
Thank you. That's what we're here for. It's always a ride over a Totalus, Jeffianus.
Is it a really episode without Jeff?
True.
I mean, true. Yeah. I mean, we're all here for the Jeff love. I'm going to remind everybody to go ahead and drop any questions you have into the chat. I've got a couple of my own, so I'm going to kick things off while our attendees are thinking about what they want to ask you. So the first thing I want to ask is, obviously you selected some of the greatest hits cover today. What were some of the runner-ups that you had to drop from your presentation?
A big one for me is the entire SCP Foundation. That whole idea of like, if you're unfamiliar, it's sort of like a fictional foundation that's run as very much true. So unfiction is sort of the genre, meaning it is fiction, but it's written as if it's correct, if it's true, real history. And it can be contributed by anybody, and it's sort of writing these creatures that shape our history. Yeah. It's honestly kind of like Jeff. It's like, if something is unexplained, it's probably an SCP.
Yeah, and there's like so many like long, like 2.5 hour, 5 hour videos on these SCPs.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I fell down that rabbit hole and never crawled out for a very long time, but that was up on that list.
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy to come to the conclusion of Slender Man and Bloody Mary, because Bloody Mary's arguably the biggest story, like spoken traditional story in this kind of genre, while Slender Man is the biggest internet hoax. So it was just tying them together with a mediary, which fit perfectly with Jeff, who definitely hasn't reached the same fame as either story, but you can see how it was inspired by the first one and inspired the second one.
Yeah. We have a question from Trip. Do y'all feel like analog horror contributes to this topic?
That is such a great question. I am such a lover of analog horror. It is not even funny. I think there's this mythos surrounding horror nowadays, and I think the proliferation of the internet is obviously the what people are making things that they couldn't have ever made before. The ease of access is what I'm trying to say. And I think analog horror has this, I can't remember what it was, like a girl who lived in her house and she had this puppet, but it was like a baby monster that lived. I can't remember what it's called, but everybody thought it was real for the longest time. And I have to find the name of it, and I'll find it later. But like for the longest time, people thought, okay, this girl is like living this thing. And yeah, Blair Witch is a perfect example. And horror these days really blurs the line of reality and what perceived reality. Yeah. And I think maybe we're getting a little better at like our critical thinking skills and critical reading skills. But there's always going to be those people who are like, this is real, and this is like those girls.
I've read Jeff the Killer's story. That screams real. So
I hope that answered your question. I kind of just mumbled, but
but also like even with you, because you look a lot into horror movies specifically because of your the soundtracks through horror films, and so you've introduced me to some that I just didn't expect them to be as good, right? Like Hereditary and
He didn't expect Hereditary to be a good movie.
I wasn't sure about any of it. I don't watch horror movies because I'm just scared. Whenever I watch horror movies, I got the blanket and I'm tied in.
Yeah, I had to be taken out of Mars Attacks at the age of 10. I don't do scary. And that's
I
supposed
was
to be a
always
comedy.
way too scared, but I think I hit an age where it was like I had too much anxiety and horror felt like it was controlled anxiety. Like now it's my choice to be scared.
See, Chucky was always a big one for me.
Because you're ginger?
Mostly because when I was 6 or 7, my uncle sat me in front of a TV and put on Chucky and told me to watch it. And I didn't know at the time, but I could have probably got up and left at any point, but I didn't. And I just remember it just horrified me as a young child, and Chucky's always stuck with me since.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of comments on the different movies going on. One of the things that's occurred to me listening to you talk is sort of the sociological history of horror. I mean, it brings up the things that every culture fears at a given time.
I specifically, in my research, I studied the genre of folk horror, which is specifically what scares a culture and where do we derive our fears from, and is it the past, is it repeating the past, is it the idea that traditions maybe take over for us, and
is it the fact that women might know things?
Yeah, I mean, I even wrote in my notes and it didn't get touched on, but a lot of what we talked about now, like with the Slender Man thing, with the Bloody Mary thing, it's always young women who are in these stories, who are at the forefront of this idea of trying to connect with the paranormal. And I do not have the knowledge behind me, but the next paper I write will be about that intersection.
So what sort of soundtrack would Jeff the Killer have?
Probably like a
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, probably a Five Nights at Freddy with God, what's that one with like the really high pitched voice and like
Fred?
No.
Someone has suggested circus music.
Yeah, circus music with like a sinister undertone. Because the whole time
in a minor key.
Yeah, Stephen King's It, but wrong.
it's as if you played the It soundtrack backwards. Ooh, just in reverse.
I think that would be too effective.
To bring it more general to the podcast, what's the hardest part of creating a spin-off podcast when you're not the creators of the original?
I find what's really difficult is trying to connect things that don't exactly connect. And because they've given me kind of free reign to kind of make up that middle ground, it's making up something that is plausible that could have happened and not like outlandish. Like you're not going to see Jeff appear in Africa if 2 months earlier he was in Turkey and then 2 months later he's back in Turkey. It just, I would create.
I mean, if anybody could do it, it would be Jeff.
It would, yeah, true. But I try and kind of bring like a realism more so than it was intended. And I've reached a lot of points where I kind of get stuck because of that. Like trying to incorporate 10,000 Jeffs into a story that was going one Jeff at a time for quite a long time. So that definitely was quite difficult to put together.
I just sit and listen and be funny.
And it's also trying to be genuine to the story as well. Like I don't want Jeff to always come across as like these terribly competent people, even though sometimes they do, but they still have their moments where they'll put their boat too close to the shore and the whole boat will just be beached now.
I tend, when I'm explaining Jeff to people who don't listen to you or to Totalus Rankium, I generally describe him as a dynasty of hapless idiots who mean well, but it rarely goes well.
Perfect. And we do that great.
Yeah, no, that is true. And out of all the Jeffs, it's gone well for probably 3. Because usually they end in some horrific way. Does
it make it hard to take people in your world who are actually named Jeff seriously?
I have a cousin named Jeff, and the first time Bailey met him, he just looked at me like, and I was like, no, no.
I do find myself every time we hear the name Jeff, we immediately look at each other.
Yeah, it's ruined it.
But also at the same time, I do try and name people who are Jeffs, because we rank Jeff 1 to Jeff 35, but there's
Way more.
hundreds of thousands of Jeffs now. So I say, like, I work with a guy named Jeff, and he's vegan, so I call him Jeff the Vegan. But because there's probably more than one Jeff the Vegan, he's Jeff the 6,433rd, right? And then, like, your uncle Jeff,
My cousin,
your
Jeff
cousin,
the firefighter.
the Jeff the firefighter. Doesn't have a huge success rate, but everyone gets out alive. Usually the building just collapses, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Can't win them all.
Are there any future Jeffs that you'd like to tease?
That's on you. I'm along for the ride.
Yes,
Oh.
but I don't know how. He's not going to be happening in our podcast now.
Oh, okay.
But eventually there will be a season 2, which will be how the Jeffs got from Europe around the world.
Excellent.
And in that, we'll be covering the Jeffs, pirate lives of the Jeffs, and how they got to the Americas, and then there are some Jeffs in America.
I mean, if there's anything we all know about history, it's that there's always a Jeff.
There's always a Jeff.
I'm
Like,
gonna be here forever.
Jeff the 30th is actually a real Jeff in our story. He's a real guy. He's a historian. He's a knight.
Oh, is this the guy from the Fourth Crusade?
Yeah, Jeffrey of
Villehardouin or
Villehardouin.
something?
Yes. So
I read that.
We'll be doing an episode on Jeffrey of Villehardouin and on Jeffrey of Villehardouin. So that is the original guy, and then his nephew.
Oh.
Who
I read his memoir of the Fourth Crusade, and one of my favorite bits is that he mentions the sack of Constantinople was on a Tuesday.
I was born on a Tuesday, so really it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, he's the most daunting one, especially those two, because not only do their stories mix together a lot, but also they're definitely two different people, but the relation between them's kind of so I'm just gonna make up how they're related.
No, that's fine.
That's how history's made, right? I'll edit Wikipedia
Obviously.
after, and we'll get that all
In
sorted.
10,000 years, all these people are gonna be like, why were so many people named Jeff?
We plan on being the Historia Augusta of Roman history 4,000 years
Excellent.
from now.
Excellent. We all need that, and it's a gift to future historians.
Truly.
So I have a theory that Jeff spelled with a J are the hapless idiots, whereas Jeff spelled with a G are the mirror universe competent ones with the goatees.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Well,
Write that down. Write that down.
You might not. You probably don't remember because you were not the co-host then. But in Jeff the Great or Jeff 5's episode, he slaughters the entire Jeffianus family.
Sure.
They're all gone. The Jeffianus family and the Jeffianus family were mortal enemies, and the Jeffianus
Capulets
family,
and Montagues, yes.
yeah, and the Jeffianus family they were rich, they were powerful, they were equestrian, they were super high up there. Jeff accidentally ordered armed men to go into the Jeffianus estate and kill all of them one day.
I mean, I hate it when I do that.
Yeah. He meant
so much paperwork.
Well, it's the yellow pages, you know, like the names are so close together, and the numbers you can really tell which line it's on.
Yeah.
He was trying
Could
to
happen to anybody,
cleaning, but
yeah.
Butt dial.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Rip suggests a butt dial.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is
and there's a pod kitty
who I also tried to get to be named Jeff, but it was vetoed. Unfortunately,
I want my cat to be a good boy, not
a hapless idiot.
Yeah.
So is this the beautiful idiot, or is this the evil
this
genius?
Is the evil mastermind.
Yeah. This is also history cat because he is smart. And then if I put it over, you might be able to see him.
His little
that's
tail.
geography cat. But he doesn't know where anything is.
He knows tricks, but he's like really mad right now.
Yeah.
Hi. He's a good boy most of the time.
Greg in the chat says, I have a coworker named Jeff, and I was planning on promoting him to Jeff with a G on account of my love of G's, so that tracks.
You know what? I think that is
Greg,
an
you do
honor
have
that
all
only-
the G's.
Yeah.
That is an honor only you can bestow upon him, Greg.
Yeah.
So we've got about 6 minutes left. If anybody else has a question, it doesn't have to be serious. as you can tell.
We are serious is not a word I would use to describe us.
Our podcast is very serious.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we just released Jeff the Chef.
He's so mad.
He is so mad. Okay.
So out of
Anyway.
all of the characters that Totalus Rankium has revealed have been insufficiently covered by history, such as Roger and Jeff and Gilbert the Gonger.
We actually don't like
all
Roger.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh, if you had to fight Slender Man or Jeff, who are y'all taking?
Okay. I think this is a good time to go in because right now it seems pretty obvious.
I think
Slenderman is the bigger threat.
Yeah.
But I actually did not cover the powers that Jeff the Killer has. He actually does have inhuman powers.
Obviously.
Sure.
And I didn't write them down, but I have a list right here.
Number one is hand-to-hand combat.
He has a hand-to-hand combat prowess. He has enhanced senses, so there's going to be no sneak attacks from behind the tree or whatever. Athleticism, he could run.
He's rolling crazy on athletics.
He has inhuman durability and inhuman stamina, as well as great stealth.
The creepypasta wiki is a beautiful place because under hobby it just says murdering people to satisfy his bloodlust and stalking his next victim. I personally think Trip could take Jeff, is what I'm saying. Me, well, I'm laying down, but
well, now I will take Jeff only because when he becomes a serial killer, he does end up having a rule where he will only kill people who aren't sleeping.
And I got insomnia, so like I'm good.
Yeah.
We just got a pop-up suspicious connection blocked, so I think Jeff's coming for us.
You said his name too many times.
Oh no.
He's in the chat right now. He's coming. Popping out of the Zoom call.
Yeah, no, I have thought about doing like outside Jeffs, but then it gets into like a weird space of which Jeffs do we do, and like sure it starts off fine with like Jeffrey Goldblum, right? But then you very quickly descend to like Jeffrey Bezos, Jeffree Star,
Epstein.
Yeah, oh yeah, Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. There's just Jeffrey Dahmer. There's not a lot
of great chefs.
There's not a lot of great chefs. So
I mean, technically he was a Jeff the Killer.
Yeah.
He didn't give himself the name, so he deserves it more.
Yeah, he also did way more deplorable stuff than our Jeff guy.
And wouldn't the circus clown music also be appropriate there?
For Jeffrey Dahmer?
Wasn't he the one who dressed up as clowns?
That was Gacy.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He was just
He's in the chat tempting fate, by the way.
That was John Wayne. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Dahmer was like the charming one. I don't know.
Yeah. It's like that one show, Mind Master or whatever, Mastermind. I don't know.
Sure.
It's about serial killers. They go around interviewing serial killers.
Oh yeah.
So if people want to start listening to your show, is there an episode that you would recommend they begin with?
Mine.
So the first from Jeff 1 to Jeff the 18th, it's with the previous co-host who had to retire away from it. And I have Nick here now. But if you want to get into an episode that is really short, pretty funny, before you commit to our like hour and 40-minute episodes on Jeff the Great, there's 2 of them, so there's about 4 hours worth of content almost on Jeff the Great. He just
great.
But the most recent episode, Jeff the Chef, 30 minutes. I'm funny as hell the whole time.
I tried a little bit more stuff with like background music on some parts. I'm learning editing, and I think it's probably our best.
It's a
yeah. So definitely check out our last episode, Jeff the Chef. Yeah. The first. Jeff the Chef, the first.
Obviously.
Anything else you'd like to say to wrap things up? We're almost at time.
Well, thanks for having us out.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for coming.
I've been wanting to do this for like about 2 years now. Had my mind set on it as soon as I had a podcast. I was like, this is what I'm going to be on, and I've been lucky to meet everybody and lucky to be invited.
Yeah. We're gonna head over to the Russian propaganda
Yeah.
now. Thank you guys for coming. This is so cool. Yeah, people actually showed up.
Thanks to Nick and Bailey for their talk on urban legends, and see you all in the next session, wherever you choose to
Thank
go.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.